Patrick Loch Otieno Lumumba is here with us this morning. He's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and Tanganyika and joins us in the Situation Room this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Very well.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much for being here with us this morning. We're looking into the state of the nation, and it's interesting because we sit here in the mornings and we look at how things are unfolding, and there are people in our audiences who sometimes joke and they say we're going to need a little bit of something, a bit of a libation or two to then be able to allow us to get through it, and then to say that at the spot where things are at the moment, how can we actually get through it? And that's what we're talking about this morning. But before we do, Dennis takes us to Lesotho this week. We'd love to hear your interpretation of this.
Basuto land, also known as the kingdom in the sky. Why? Because it is the only country in the world that is 1,000 meters above the sea level. One thing that stands out is the hut that they do have, which also is seen in their flag, and also the blanket. Why? Because if you want to enjoy winter, the snow and everything, you don't need to leave the continent. Go to Lesotho, you will enjoy it there. They're also rich in diamond, and that continues to push the country's economy. But the proverb that Basotho are telling us today, one who wants everything ends up with nothing. How would you interpret it?
Absolutely. If you are like the hyena before you and you want everything, you lose everything, and you've got to focus. And that proverb actually was given prominent by King Moshoeshoe to tell his people we have to be focused. It is in focus that you get what you need and deserve. So it's a warning to the greedy.
Well said. Well,
Indeed.
Interpreted. Santi.
As we're looking into the state of the nation, one of the easiest things to do, PLO, is to lament. Misery loves company, where we can sit and talk about how things are going so terribly bad. And then we can say, well, we're going to shake it off and remove the sackcloth and then, come back and be happy. But one of the ways towards making sure that things are right is to look at how bad they've gone so that you can understand that you should never go back here again. Now, when you look at the state of the nation and the things that are happening in the country at the moment, is this normal? A year before an election where things need to be in a state of toss-up in order for you to say, well, okay, let's land this by virtue of the vote. So are all of these things normal, as some people would say that it's normal for Kenya to go through the throes that it's currently going through?
First of all, let us remember that we can never stop agonizing. It is in agonization that you organize. And not everything that is designed to save the nation is in the public domain. I know clergy, I know Kenyans of goodwill who behind the scenes try to make this nation better. And we've been around. The nation is not at ease. The politicians in this administration will tell you we are doing very well. We have the biggest economy in East Africa. We are middle-level economy. That is balderdash. The reality is that this country is on tenterhooks, and you can see all the signs. You can see the rhetoric from the politicians. We are recoiling into our ethnic cocoons. We are telling other Kenyans that they belong elsewhere. You can see the vitriol and the anger that characterizes how we do things. You can see the politicians who are being celebrated as mobilizers, and these are the ones who have something called goons that they operate. And if there was any doubt in my mind that this country is not on the right trajectory, is the incident that took place on the day of the budget at the All Saints Cathedral, where captured on CCTV, repeated on national television, individuals are arrested, and we are told by no lesser person than the provost of the All Saints Cathedral that he was informed that they were released, and those whose funds had been stolen were compensated. Who compensated them? I have since, on the 24th day of June, wrote to the Archbishop of the Anglican Church, Archbishop Olisapet, because he said the IG of police must resign. And I've told him, don't stop there, because this is how nations degenerate. So that when you look at research, and there is extant research that now tells us that there are over 200 ginger groups in the Republic of Kenya. Some we know, Chinkororo. And my good friend George Kegoro wrote about Chinkororo in his master's thesis at the University of Nairobi in the year 2009. Amachuma. We know about Angola Msumbiji. We know about Mungiki. We know about the Men in Black. It all started with Youth for KANU 92 in 1992. These ginger groups.
Yeah.
And they have now acquired a life of their own. And let me tell you, the tragedy of our country, which makes me sad, is that there is now a crop of individuals in Kenya across the political divide, in government and in opposition, who believe that they are above the law. They believe that they operate outside of the law. They believe that they cannot be arrested, because if you arrest them, their ethnic group will rise in their defense. When a country finds herself in such a situation, and I'm in the business of writing. This is one of my civic duties. I wrote to the National Cohesion Chairman, my good friend Bishop Omai, immediately upon his appointment, and I told him and gave him names of people who in mother tongue are using vitriolic language. He has responded to me, to his credit. I wrote to the IEBC, telling them that the law is very clear on when the elections will be held on Tuesday, the 10th day of August, the year 2027. The law does not allow anybody to engage in any campaign. And when you drive across the country, I was in Meru over the weekend, and as I drove, there are billboards everywhere. In Nairobi, there are billboards everywhere. You drive across the country, there are billboards everywhere. Everybody is campaigning 1 year in advance of the elections, and you can see the drums of war being beaten in the very same way that they were in the elections in the year 2007. We hear politicians saying, if our candidate, the president, does not get enough votes, then we are going to ensure that we add more votes. This is how nations degenerate. This is how it happened in Haiti with Francois Duvalier, with Tonton Macoute, when he formed ginger groups which were abducting people, and the forces that are enjoined by the law to do what is good and right were looking the other way. When people are supposed to be sent to jail, they only receive a slap on the wrist.
Some might say you're being alarmist, PLO.
Yes, this is the time to actually warn Kenya. We must not imagine for one moment that this country is immune. We have seen how countries just break down. This same kind of language was being spoken in Sudan. Now go and look at Sudan. It is non-functional. Let them go to Eastern Congo. Let them think about what happened in Somalia. Let them know what happened in Central African Republic. Today, we wake up and we are told that young people were abducted by who? And we are not told who abducted them. We are told that carjackings are happening by who? We are told that the country is dealing with the issue, but we don't see the evidence. We ought to be alarmed. Every Kenyan of goodwill must not sit pretty and believe that things are right. I listen to people who are politicians, who are cabinet ministers, saying that they don't like a particular ethnic group. How can you, in good conscience, say that you don't like a particular ethnic group because of an individual, a miscreant in that particular ethnic group? Is this not what they did in Rwanda in 1994 against the Tutsi, and it led to the genocide? The message is, this country ought to retreat. This is a good country, but no more than 5,000 individuals who now think that they are demigods are leading us in the wrong direction. The ballot no longer carries the magic of giving us the men and women that we deserve. But we can still sanitize the budget, the ballot. We can sanitize the ballot through education. Talking to the people. There are Kenyans of goodwill who are trying to do that. My friend Okia Omutata tries to do that using the court system. But we don't acknowledge that. We acknowledge those who have goons.
PLO, we find ourselves in, I say, a very sad place. Why do I say that? Because we have taken absence of violence to mean peace. Yet peace is something that should be consumed, and we should see that being exercised by each and every single individual. It can't be that today, when Kenyans are exercising their right to demonstrate, there is that incident that happened in Nakuru, where a disabled man who cannot outrun the police was picked up and mistreated. And the statement that came from the police while calling that out said that the arrest of that individual might, use the word might, have gone against the police protocols. The word there is not might. It did go against the police protocols. That notwithstanding, he was exercising his right to demonstrate. We look at Davis Lichuma, who was abducted on Thursday. He's just been released. He's in hospital accessing treatment. And every other person who was arrested and was beaten up, they were tortured before they were released. One asks the question, where we live and sit today as a country, why is it that there is a minority who think that the law, the constitution that they swore to protect and uphold, is just a piece of paper?
You know, my former teacher, may rest in peace, the late Hastings Opinyoko Thogendo, in 1972, wrote an article, Constitutions Without Constitutionalism. You can have a constitution, and I've heard people say we have the best constitution, but best is about applying this. This is a country that has no shortage of institutions and laws. We have the ombudsman, whose duty is to ensure that public servants and public institutions conduct themselves in the best interest of the people. We have the national cohesion, which is designed to ensure that we, in our diversity, live in harmony. We have the Kenya Human Rights Commission. We have the laws, but yet what you say is right. We changed the name of the police force, which was a colonial relic, into a police service, so that the police could be a service. But I've seen and heard with my own eyes a senior politician at a public rally saying, have been allotted people to take to the police force. In other words, we now have a country where if you are a public official, you are a senator, you are a member of parliament, then you are given slots to bring in your own people into the force. When merit dies, it manifests itself in several ways. And this is what, unfortunately, we are beginning to see in the Republic of Kenya. On the 25th of June, I deliberately decided to drive around town. And it was barricaded. And I, on a number of occasions, negotiated with the police and said, you are stopping people. What you ought to have done, if I were there without being an expert, was to deploy the General Service Unit into the city of Nairobi and ensure that we all go to work, or allow us to go to work, and any errant individual would then be dealt with firmly and in accordance with the law. On that day, I can guarantee you the business communities lost nothing less than 3 billion Kenya shillings. International transaction that ought to have taken place through our banking system did not take place, and many other people. And yet we are proceeding as if all is normal. I can't agree with you more that the mere fact that there is calm does not mean that there is a tornado which is breeding. And the discontent of people, Kenyans are very angry. And you see it when you are driving. Kenyans are angry. You see it when you hoot at a person who is crossing the road. They are angry. This anger is a product of certain kind of discontentment, and we've got to deal with it. And unfortunately, the political class are only interested in what I call a theater of the absurd. That is why they hold these political rallies. I asked one of them, who is my friend, okay, you've held a political rally during the week and is attended by 10,000. Does it not worry you that these people are not working? You say the rally is successful. It's a weekday. Are they not working? And then you give them 200 shillings each. You should be worried. But they are not worried because their egos are so large. They are not worried because their interest is to acquire political office. And why is political office so important in Kenya? I've said it and I'm repeating it. If you want to be wealthy without effort or with minimal effort, become a parliamentarian in Kenya. Then become an MCA in Kenya, acquire political office. Suddenly, within months, you can build a mansion which even if you worked for 100 years, you would never afford. And the young people therefore look at this and say, well, this is the route. I was asking myself yesterday, when I was thinking about the budget and noting that almost half of parliamentarians did not attend, and I said, shouldn't we make representation part-time? Indeed, are they not part-time? Because the lawyers who are politicians continue to practice. The engineers who are politicians continue to practice. Should we make it part-time so that they are only entitled to an allowance when they do a sitting? Make politics unattractive. Then it will attract those who truly want to serve. That is what those are some of the things that run in my mind, and I dare say the minds of many Kenyans of goodwill.
You see, PLO, you're not wrong in thinking like that, because the other day I was with a taxi driver and we were behind a Passat, and that gentleman said Kibaki got it right by scaling down on what cabinet secretaries are driving. Why? Because it is cheap, it is affordable, it is easy to fuel, and if that was the ceiling that cabinet secretaries would drive, then it would also inform the government in terms of even loans that they're giving to members of parliament. It will be the price of a Passat. Right now we're giving members of parliament 5 million shillings plus. Maybe we would have given them 1.5 million bob and the rest left for Wananchi to use. But that we changed all that because there are those who are superior, who are demigods and only think about themselves. Yet, if you look at the constitution, power belongs to the people. That those in office today are there because people have donated that power to them. PLO, what must Wananchi then do to reclaim that power and show the political class that you are their courtesy of us? Without us, y'all don't exist.
You know, civic awareness is critical. And one of the things that I'm beginning to see, I'm seeing people organizing at different levels. I see women organizing at different levels. I see young people organizing at different levels. I see the church beginning to come out. The Pentecostals, the evangelicals, the Catholics, they are beginning to reclaim the ground that they had abandoned in the hope that a new constitutional dispensation would help us. They are now realizing that the human element is important. They are now beginning to tell politicians, we are not going to allow this. I see the media coming out boldly in the same manner that it did in 1992. And when you see the reaction of the politician, it means that they are beginning to get the pinch. The fire is beginning to burn them. That is good. It is when the political class begin to recognize that power is held in trust that they begin to behave. And I love it when I see, for example, the controller of budget and the auditor general coming up with some of these reports. We may think it is not useful. It is. You know, I was thinking to myself that what we now call counties were actually districts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were run by a district commissioner.
Yeah.
Now you have a governor, many of them who think they are presidents. And you have a cabinet and you have a parliament. And in those days, the district commissioner only had a Land Rover. Today, governors attend funerals in those geographic spaces in helicopters. And you see the amount of money that they are spending. In their minds, they must be brought down to earth. And the reason why they must be brought down to earth is that our taxes must be used responsibly. The people are beginning to feel the pinch. If you look at the statistics of SMEs which are going down, if you look at any of the newspapers, the properties that are being sold, if you look at the outstanding pending bills which have not been paid, the economy is suffering. And normally, when you begin to hurt the middle class, then they begin to rise up. And then working with the other Kenyans, the politicians are beginning to get the message. But it is not as fast as we desire. But the task must be undertaken diligently, consistently, and courageously in the knowledge that it is not for the faint-hearted.
Look at the things that we've talked about. I mean, today on the Standard, spending spree. And you're going to ask the question, how much money do you need as a county? Well, it seems you need 235 million shillings from one county to fly around to travel within Kenya. And that in another county, 1.18 billion. In another one, 471 million. It seems as though if you're going from Migori to Kisumu, you cannot use the road. You must fly in a helicopter. It seems as though you need 4 vehicles to get yourself from one place to the next that cost fuel of 214 to 15 shillings for diesel. This is the reality. It seems as though we're going back to school now, and we've carted off all the secondary school heads to Mombasa for the last week to have a conversation about what's been happening with our children who are in school and how can we keep the fire burning low, literally. How can we make sure that a health system works that you spent 104 billion shillings on, which for the last 7 days has not functioned, and they tell us it's a glitch. And I say it's not a glitch, it's a breakdown. Can all of these problems, PLO, and we say that the answer to all of this is leadership, because if the fish rots from the head, then you get rid of the head. Okay. Can you solve all of these issues with the vote?
No, not at all. Let me tell you, if, we appear to have misguided faith in the ballot box. And I believe, we've been around now, Africa's problem is the ballot. Because African politics now attracts not our very best, not our very honest, and is a combination of factors. In the early 60s up to the 70s, your parliamentarian was not the most well paid. Then we assumed that if you pay your parliamentarians more, or your councillors, they call them MCAs, more, then they would perform better. Then you also gave them funds which they controlled. If they are women representatives, they have a fund, a slush fund essentially, which they control. If they are MCAs, they have a ward fund. If they are MPs, they have a fund, which is the constituency fund. And then you created funds such as Hustler, such as Nyota, which you distribute in cash.
Yes.
In places.
Yeah.
Then those who went into politics, and that is why politics in Kenya is a life and death issue, because you have access to all these funds. So when Kenyans believe that in the year 2007 you'll have change, I laugh. Why do I laugh? I look at both sides, the so-called opposition and those in government. They are the same individuals. I've known them. Some of them were in parliament when I was a university student. So when we assume that that is what is going to help this country, we are deluding ourselves. And many times I think that Kenya has reached a stage where we must say that anybody who has ever served as an MCA, as a parliamentarian, as a president should be barred from contesting election, so that we start on a totally different slate with different ethics. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. But that is what we need dramatically.
Because the person who was involved in corrupting the process cannot be allowed to fix it.
How can they fix it today? They tell you, for example, that if you want to have a rally and you want 100,000 people, we have never gotten a rally of 100,000. We don't even count well. They are normally between 10 and 30,000 at the very best. You've got to mobilize. There is something called mobilization fees. You know, there's actually bribery fees. Then you expect that individual to make the right decision. In a nutshell, what I'm saying, beyond lamentation, is that one of the things that we must do when we are thinking about amending the Constitution is rethinking governance. When I was part of the group that were collecting views in the early 2000s, one of the things that we said, let us eliminate constituency-based politics. Let us have proportional representation. And we argued then it would strengthen political parties. It would ensure that political parties have the very best men and women. Of course, we lost that. We are now become more ethnic. Just let's look at what is happening in the forthcoming by-election. Is it in Kalau?
Kalau, yes.
Listen to the rhetoric. And you know that you are not going to get your very best. There was an election, I think, in Embu, and we are told millions were spent. So, in a nutshell, we are deluding ourselves in believing that on the 10th day of August, the year 2027, we shall have new, freshly baked politicians. They are the very same. The things they said 10 years ago, they are not saying them. They are the same. They don't change their colors. They are the same. So Kenyans must rethink. And I now see people talking about constitutional change. Perhaps that is where we have to get it. What must we change? Governance. We must, and there are following things that we must do about governance. Number one, we must merge counties. Ethiopia, with a population almost twice as us, bigger than this country twice, has only 12 regions, with Dire Dawa and Addis Ababa being the equivalent of Nairobi and Mombasa, being governed differently. No governor. We must reduce counties, in my view, to 14 at the very best. Two, we must reduce the size of parliament. We must reduce the size of parliament, and we must consider bringing about proportional representation so that we don't have these ethnic groupings which masquerade as political parties. We must reduce remuneration for those who are in the political space, and we must consider making our parliamentarians part-timers. We must re-energize the civil service so that it becomes a civil service that is not politically aligned. Once we do that and we begin to merge institutions, there are institutions, for example, that should be merged. The Office of the Ombudsman, the Office of National Cohesion, and Kenya Human Rights Commission. That should be one commission. You know, there is so much work to be done. Once we have the architecture of governance properly done, then we can begin to change the DNA of your political class. It will begin to attract people who truly want to serve. But in the next 10 to 15 years, if we continue on this basis, our politics will continue to attract our very worst. And I want to explain what I mean by worst. People think that if you have a degree, you are a professor, you are a doctor, you are an engineer, you are a lawyer, you are good. No. In fact, some of the most dangerous people to this country are professionals. It is character.
Yeah.
That's why Ryan Holiday says the first thing is discipline, humility, honesty, You must have values. And these are the things that you don't see in many of our politicians. How they conduct themselves, how they talk to Kenyans, the arrogance that they exude. And I'm saying that we must begin working at it. It is not going to be easy. And that is why you see your typical politician loves dividing us along ethnic lines. They say, it is our turn. Let me say this because it has been said.
Yeah.
There was a time when people said that Nilots should organize as Nilots to retain power. Can you believe it in the 21st century? Somebody who has gone to school thinking like that? In response, they said our cousin the Bantus. That is how the former deputy president of the Republic of Kenya then started saying our cousins when he went to Western Kenya. That is how we started talking about Murima and Mtaro and the Murembe group. How can people in the 21st century, when we are talking about East African integration and African integration, be thinking like that? But I know why.
Why?
It is through that avenue that then they distract us from discussing the things that really matter. Because as the saying goes, your typical politician thinks of only one thing, the next election, not the next generation. And that is where we are in Kenya.
You see, PLO, you speak about politicians, the parliament, individuals are supposed to be in, they don't show up. They don't bother. And that is on a bill that is going to decide how Kenya is governed the next 1 year, because it is budget that will cater for all the resources the country has. They don't show up. But we will see them present in all political rallies every other day, including weekdays, when they are supposed to be in these houses. Today we hear, hi cousins, we've even politicized a road, saying that the construction of Mau-Rironi Road, because it is going to a specific region of the country, then others are now opposing it because it does not go to them. We are politicizing and ethnicizing a road that is supposed to serve Kenyans. One would think that when one is using that road, perhaps they would have to show their ID and their region for them to access it. PLO, today we live in a country where we are saying that those who have been part of the problem are the ones to give us the solution. Many would say you can't do the same thing the same way and expect different results.
You know, when you talk of, there's a member of parliament whom I will not name, but I know him very well. He is reported to have said that what should now happen is that no development at all should be taken to Mount Kenya at all. The development should now be taken only to Nyanza and Rift Valley and Western Kenya, because one of their own is now head of the Parliamentary Budget Committee. You know, when somebody thinks like that and just doesn't think it, he speaks it. And he's a member of parliament who I believe has a university degree. Then he tells you we have a problem. He or she does not understand what running a country is in the 21st century. And it is because we have created a country where mobilization is on ethnicity. And once again, we thought about this. When we were doing the Constitution in 2002, we invited the late Professor Ali Mazrui. And he presented a paper to us. If African politics are ethnic prone, can we have constitutions that are ethnic proof? And what he was trying to do, how can we deal with this ogre called ethnicity in a creative manner, in a manner that does not stand in the way of development, understood broadly to mean things beyond infrastructure. So I can't agree with you more that this idea that Kenyans have, that they are waiting for elections with bated breath, because the day after election they'll have a bunch of people in the image of Moses doing things for them for the benefit of the country. It is completely untrue.
PLO, there's a statement that was made here by one of our guests, and he said that Kenyans know who is a bad leader and who should not be voted for. And Kenyans equally know who is a good leader who would bring in change. But Kenyans choose to vote for the person who they know very well should not be in those offices. Do we as Kenyans, do Kenyans then, are they part of the problem as to where we find ourselves
Of course. The Kenyan voter, and I dare say the African voter, is a co-author of his own misfortune. I think I've said this before at one time, and I was quoting Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere when in 1994 he was invited by his party, Chama cha Mapinduzi, to give a suggestion on who should be the president of Tanzania. And he says, first of all, he must be an individual who will fight corruption. He must be an individual who will fight against religious mobilization and ethnic mobilization. He must be an individual who knows that being in power is a position of trusteeship. He must be a humble man. Then he said, but I see my people now thinking religion, thinking ethnicity. And he said in Kiswahili, naomba iwatafune. And there is a sense in which the Kenyan voter, as you rightly say, and as your guest rightly say, they know the individuals who, if given an opportunity, would serve. But they don't. In fact, a friend of mine who is an ambassador, but who lived here, is ambassador of a foreign country, told me Kenyans have never quite voted a president or voted. They vote against something. And in that process, another person is declared the winner. Perhaps that is what we do. You go to the village today, people are voting along clan lines. People are voting along clan lines, along tribal lines, and a little bit of who paid the money most. So you are right in saying, knowing as we do the men and women who, if given the opportunity to serve, would serve, we choose not to vote them. And this is what Kenyans say, hajui siasa. And hajui siasa means that you don't bribe the electorate. Hajui siasa means that you don't drink with the electorate. Hajui siasa means that you don't lie to the electorate. Hajui siasa means you are not prepared to share with them the CDF. Hajui siasa means that you are a honest man or a woman. Then hujui siasa from the Kenyan voter standpoint.
Is there a connection between seeing things actually work and the vote that you take at the ballot? Because it seems as though when we talk about things like when you have to force a situation that something needs to give for you to see the benefits of it. I often give the example of if my grandfather hadn't insisted that my mother goes to school, the people of Igbodo village would not have understood that it was a good thing to send their girls to school. But something had to happen. He had to be insulted by the people of the village and say, why are you wasting this woman who would have been a good mother and a wife by sending her to school? But until she graduated and then became a medical professional, people then understood, look at what we can actually do. So, does something need to be uncomfortable?
Yes.
In order for people to actually see and understand that this change that you speak of, then we will leave these trivial things like collecting 200. We leave these trivial things like saying it is our time for the son of our soil to be a leader. But something has to snap. Does it not, PLO?
My sister is sad I'm giving this example because it's not a good one.
Yeah.
But when I go to Rwanda, and I go there often, the way the Rwandese think on average is very different from the way the Kenyans think. Because they have known pain. Not that we must know pain. We must now learn not to experience that pain. But they can relate. The woman in the village who is part of the milk production process, who has been given a cow, thinks differently. The person who goes to the village hospital and gets medication thinks differently. The person who sees the traffic office, the person who has a tablet in schools in Rwanda. Because he or she is able to see that the tax he or she pays is resulting in good education, health facilities. Look at Kenya today. The number of international system schools, British or American, there is a proliferation of them because the middle class has lost faith in the education system. All these parliamentarians you see, 99% of them, their children are not going to Kenyan schools.
Oh, for sure.
Number two, 99% of parliamentarians, their medical cover also has a component of treatment outside of the country. So they have no interest. But when I grew up, partly in my rural home and partly in Nairobi, when we heard you are going to a private school, we wondered what was wrong with you because schools worked. In my rural village in Usenge, there was a dispensary at a place called Usigu, and I would go there, and there would be a prescription, and I would go to the pharmacy, and I would get medicine. In Jericho, it was the same. I went to St. Patrick's Primary School here in Maringo and Usenge both, and at Standard 5, each student was given a mathematical set. You never bought exercise books, you never bought textbooks. Garbage was collected using trucks that lifted the garbage bin. Today, we have takataka collecting takataka. You have vehicles which themselves are not roadworthy, are the ones which are collecting garbage. And these things and then it was a joy to pay tax. Today, what is the joy? And allow me to say this. Take, for example, we look at our roads. The NTSA now tells you that we are going to inspect motor vehicles. First of all, they have no capacity to inspect vehicles. 80% of Kenyan vehicles are over 4 years old. It's a revenue collection exercise. So the whole idea is not to streamline, it is just to collect more and more money. If you drive along Kenyan roads, and I drive along them, the number of police officers who are deployed hiding so that they catch you with a speed, why are you doing that? Go to countries like Botswana and Namibia and Rwanda. They have speed limits and people are supposed to drive, but the intention in Kenya is to catch you breaking the law so that we can fine you. In other words, I'm saying we have a problem in our philosophical appreciation of what taxes ought to give back to us. Everything that ought to be in the public, when you talk about, for example, SHA collapsing, I'm not saying this is what happened. Could it have been collapsed? Because sometimes they are collapsed. Because people want to go back to the manual system for whatever reason. So we have all these beautiful things, SHA, we have all these e-citizen, we have all these Ardhi Sasa, all beautiful things on paper in a country where people have fidelity to truth and doing the right thing. They ought to make service delivery efficient. But that is not the case. So I agree with you. There is need for discomfort on the part of the people so that they may wake up. I'm speaking metaphorically. Fire must be placed under our bottoms. And when we burn, it will do two things. It will remove the wax from our ears, and the scales from our eyes will begin to fall off. And what we will demand is service delivery, not noise. And I'm repeating it this. When a government is working, it doesn't say it. It is self-evident. When you hear a government is shouting, this is what we are doing, you see them taking newspaper pullouts to say what they have done, then there is a problem. You know, one of the things that I see in Kenyan newspapers is governors saying, we give you 100% tax rebate or waiver.
Yeah.
And it's the image of the governor that is there. Why? If there is a waiver, why don't they communicate to their people? They know who are paying taxes. Why are they spending money to tell us that they have waived taxes? It is warped understanding of what governance and governance is all about. The ESCC last week issued a statement that no member of parliament should have their photos on any public project. You drive around the country, they are all there. Why? Because it is not about the people. It is for personal glorification. You have a border post, then you say, donated courtesy of some fellow. You have NC, this building painted courtesy of some fellow. A gate, a wall. Who? These are our taxes. Kenyans must begin to understand that these individuals have no money. This is our money. When you buy bread, when you buy kiberiti, matchboxes, it is that money that accumulated goes into the financing of this thing. Robert Mugabe put it very well, that to praise a politician because he has presided over the building of a road is like praising an ATM when you withdraw your money from it. It is your money in the first place.
PLO, are we running a corruption enterprise in the country that is denying us all the good things that comes with the constitution and democracy that Kenya has fought for?
I've put it differently before, that most African countries are running kakistocracies to mean governments of our very worst, and kleptocracy to mean government that is managed by thieves. And you can't contradict it. I want you to look at the newspapers today. The Auditor General has told us that despite the warning of both the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget, there are number of accounts which have been opened in one county. They have over 500 bank accounts. You and me, if we have two accounts, we are confused.
That's a lot.
500 accounts, what are they for?
Yeah.
It is to steal money. This is a country where we say we have ghost schools to which money is channeled, and we don't arrest the ghosts. This is a country where we say we have ghost workers, ghost pensioners, and nobody is arrested, but there are live accounts into which those monies are paid, and every bank, before you open an account, conducts something called KYC, which means they have your identity card number, which means they have your photograph, and if you are a company, they have your certificate of registration. Why can't we trace them? Why can't we simply say that the anti-fraud and anti-money laundering institutions in this country working with banks are going to deal with this, and have a few individuals have their property taken? Look at what is happening in other countries where things are meant to happen. In France, their former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, was in jail.
Yes.
As I speak to you, in South Korea, both the president and the wife are in jail. That is what this country needs. But here, I've heard an opposition leader saying, I'm the one who will be in front because nobody can dare arrest me. Can you believe it? Nobody can dare arrest you even if you break the law. You are above the law. You are operating outside of the law. And I'm telling you, in this country, that is the general belief by your member of parliament, by your governors, by your head of state, by his deputy, by his ministers, that they are operating outside of the law. The law is for you and me. We lesser mortals, we children of a lesser God, we are the ones who will be subject to the law. When you run a country like that, you pay the price.
You also have a decision to make about what you can do tomorrow. PLO Lumumba is an advocate of the High Courts of Kenya and Tanganyika and has been with us this morning. And we leave on that note. Thank you very much for being here with us this morning. Asante sana. We'll talk again soon. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.